It's really fun to be a part of watching something birth. You're going to be witnessing on Above Sea Level the birthing of dreams and visions. We call that God's capital. And the one thing that we learn is that a dream without a team is a nightmare. But as you get to watch how people are interacting in here, they have found a place where for the price of a membership or a seat, they can actually have a virtual advisory board that becomes tangible once a month at a meeting. And when they come together, they share who and what they know in real time. And the purpose of that sharing is to help each other hyper-grow themselves personally and corporately. So why are we doing this show? So that you can learn that there is hope, and it's found in masterminds. If there's one thing that you need in your life to move forward, is a team. Everyone in that team's area of genius needs to be different than the other. And those parts come together, and suddenly you have the team that you had no idea that you could afford for the price of a seat or a membership. Welcome to Above Sea Level. Welcome back to Above Sea Level. Today my guest Hugh Ballou is with us, and this man has conducted more business in more arenas than you can imagine. But conducted is a key word. He's a symphony conductor. But he's also the founder of Synervision, and he works with nonprofits, for-profits, ministries. And it's been a pleasure to know you, Hugh, for the last 12 years. And every time that you tell me you're going to be in Orlando, I get excited, and I think half the group here gets excited. But I just wanted to kind of ask you a couple questions that people might wonder. Number one, do you see parallels between different parts of an orchestra and different types of people in different professions? Like, would you say that the entrepreneur is more the drum section than just a bunch of wild beasts? Do you think that the CPAs are maybe more like the woodwinds? But when you're conducting a business meeting, do you find the parallels there? And how do you take your gifts and incorporate them into family life, running businesses, and helping to grow communities like you do?
Well, I think that there's a combination of different kinds of talents in an orchestra, like in a choir. My actual expertise is in choral conducting, and I work with major orchestras and serving mega churches. So I've had major orchestras work with larger choirs. But each of the sections in the choir and the orchestra has its distinct personality. Not only do they sound different, but they have different personalities under that. So the ability to pull together all these divergent skills and personalities and create harmony is a skill I learned in over 40 years of conducting. And I transpose all of those skills that a conductor has to bring the best out of people into the corporate workplace, church boards, nonprofit boards. Exactly. And it's about building a high-performing culture. And I do think that different professions have different personalities. And I might get in trouble if I were to name some of those, but we do have very distinct personalities with the tenors and the sopranos and the drum section and the strings. So there's very different personalities. I do think the diversity is what makes excellence. We're not all playing violins. We're not all singing bass. How boring would that be? And sure. Sometimes we don't know how, growing up as a Southern white male, learning diversity was a challenge for me. And so I find that it's a blessing that nobody looks like me. Now, you and I look alike, but but when I'm immersed with all of these different skills and personalities, it's just a blessing. And we have that more and more in our workplace, and being intentional about creating that and empowering people. Because we all bring expertise, no matter if you bring the legal expertise or you bring the creative expertise. We bring our own expertise to the table. And the leader's job is to let people use that expertise.
Yeah, that's perfect. You know, with your being also the co-editor, co-publisher to Performance Magazine, Performance 360 Magazine, one of the things that hits me is that because performance is a key part of what you're all about, as well as team building and leadership, do you find that the corporate culture has an impact on corporate performance?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The Gallup polls find just about every year that 70% of corporate America is either disengaged or actively disengaged. And they translate that into $500 billion in lost revenue, lost profit. Bottom line, $500 billion, $500 billion. That's just in the middle in performance. And I do find organizations, not every organization has a strategy. It's really good to have a roadmap. How could I conduct an orchestra or choir without the roadmap? We call that sheet music. I couldn't.
Yeah,
but we go into business and we want to make it up. And we're upset. People don't know what to do when. So we haven't given them the roadmap. And so, but we have this strategy, and more often than not, this strategy becomes what a colleague of mine calls credenzaware. It looks real pretty. It's a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. So what I bring to the table, conductors know how to take this piece of paper and make something happen. We integrate this strategy with performance, because if we don't perform it, what good is this piece of paper?
Sure.
So the high-performing culture is essential to reaching our mission and our vision. And it's important for the bottom line profit. And we tend to say, oh, well, we're going to make money. Money is the engine, the gas that fuels the engine, that takes us on the road. So it's real important to balance all these aspects.
Because you work with so many different nonprofits, one of the things that I struggle with in the nonprofit world is the mindset being nonprofit. And are you seeing now that nonprofits are starting to have the revelation that you've got to be profitable or you're going to be gone?
That's a very good question. We start with this scarcity thinking because of the word nonprofit. And I'm using the term social profit a lot more, because what we profit, there's lots of meanings for the word profit. There's several meanings, and money is one of them. But we gain benefit because we bring value to people. No matter if we're in a 501c3 tax-exempt organization or if we're in a business. I do work with lots of nonprofits all over. And what I help nonprofits do is to realize this is a business model. It's a tax-exempt business, but there are very rigid rules around this. IRS has very, very distinct guidelines for how we perform. However, there's a really big opportunity, and the work of nonprofits today is more important than ever before in history, and there's more of a challenge. And so it's important for us as leaders in faith communities, in social communities and communities, associations, in this nonprofit sector, this social profit sector, to equip ourselves so that we can fully bring this ensemble of excellence to the marketplace.
The whole nonprofit side of things, we're starting to try to open up our mastermind to be more inclusive, because I seem to find that the for-profit world has their events, their meetings, and they kind of leave the nonprofits out. And I look at it and I go, the two of you need each other. Every for-profit needs a nonprofit. Every nonprofit needs a for-profit.
If you're running a business, if you're working in a business, and you're not sitting on a nonprofit board, shame on you. That's part of our social give back. Being a part of a board, being a giver in your time, your talent, and your money. Be involved in the community. It's good for business. It's good for the community. And there's things that government and business cannot do. And we can do that. It's an extension of who we are. We're business people. We're professional people. We are people of influence. So being a part of a board, being involved, rolling your sleeves up, be out there and do the work of the charity, a Rotary, a church, or a community organization. You meet some important people doing some important things, and you help people who are sometimes less fortunate than we are. And that's important work.
Well, that's the purpose of it. This is pretty much a socially responsible group that we have here at CEOCLUBS. And you've been a part of masterminds, though, for a long time. Just a guess? Mm-hmm. And we were a part of a different CEO network for a long time, and every meal was a little mastermind. Absolutely. You had like 6 other CEOs sitting at the table, but would you just kind of like to respond to how you feel that it's impacted some of your better success stories?
Well, I'm a Southerner. Can you tell? Can y'all tell?
Just a little bit. Yeah.
So in the South, we say none of us is as smart as all of us. And really the wisdom, the collective wisdom, is greater than our individual wisdom. So there's this synergy. My company, CenterVision, is the synergy with a common vision. So typically a mastermind is focused on a particular vision, particular idea, particular channel. And there are formal masterminds and there are informal masterminds. And what you talk about was a sort of a temporary meal tables 3 times a day. People center around, here's where we're going to help each other. And that was a collaborative space. Exactly. People would say, what do you need and how can I help you? And it's a profound reversal of standard networking. So there are formal masterminds. I do masterminds inside of companies, their staff. That's a form of a mastermind.
Sure.
Peer-to-peer like this, peer-to-peer leaders, business leaders. That's a different kind of mastermind. So there's lots of different forms, but every time we get out of our space and we become vulnerable with peers and we talk about the things that are most important, things happen. Only if we pay attention though.
How are you seeing favor happening between organizations, particularly in the startup space? And because favor is as good as money.
Favor is excellent. It's a collaborative space. I find that people aren't taking advantage of the collaborative energy around them. And people want sometimes to help us, but we don't help them know how to help us.
That's right.
So part of my presentation, I'm going to talk about some of the tools and systems. And we're going to be talking about conducting transformation.
All right. Well, we'll be right back with Hugh Ballou.
A musical conductor is sometimes perceived to be a dictator. Well, let me tell you, you got a little white stick and you got a bunch of union musicians, you really can't make anybody do anything. But we can, as leaders, influence others. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about building high-performance cultures. A conductor knows how to build a high-performing choir or a high-performing instrumental group we call an orchestra. Masterminds are where we get the best thinking from the people gathered. There are formal masterminds where we meet with other leaders on a schedule and we have very important work that we do peer-to-peer. We have masterminds with our boards as a nonprofit or church leader or a synagogue leader. We have masterminds with our staff, our volunteers. There's lots of ways that this group thinking accelerates our performance and builds a collaborative culture. I'm going to briefly give you Hugh's 4 principles of leadership. Number 1 is foundations. Foundations. Leaders are very clear in articulating their vision. We've been given a vision for important work. It's important that we know how to articulate that vision. People don't know how to help us unless we're really clear on that. So the foundational phase is principle number 1. A conductor stepping on the podium knows the score. They know how to get there. And the second part of foundation is the skill set. If we're going to transform organizations, we're going to transform people's lives, we begin by transforming ourselves. John Maxwell, one of his laws of leadership is the law of the lid. The organization that we lead cannot go any further than our ability to lead it. Napoleon Hill Foundation is down the road from where I live in Virginia. He went to interview Andrew Carnegie to write an article. And Andrew Carnegie said, would you interview the most successful people in the world? I'll give you an introduction. And would you work for me for 20 years for no money? He thought and he said, yes, I will, with enthusiasm. He didn't know that that Carnegie had made that offer some 200 times and people took too long to answer. Leaders are decisive. So he found out that every one of these great leaders surrounded themselves with really good people. But they were clear. He called it definiteness of purpose. Carnegie said to him, any idea that's held in the mind and emphasized, that's either feared or revered, will begin at once to manifest itself into the most convenient and appropriate physical form available. So we influence people dramatically because we're very clear, and it attracts people to us. We are the number one leadership trait, like I just demonstrated with the conductor, is influence. James Allen said, we don't attract what we need, we attract what we are. So this first principle is about becoming the influencer, being the influencer, continually working on our skills and our ability to articulate our vision, and then surrounding ourselves with principle number 2 is relationships. The conductor hires the best players. We surround ourselves with the very best people on your staff, on your board, in your informal and formal mastermind groups. Always work on relationship. Leadership is based in relationships. So the first principle, know where you're going, articulate it, Work on your skill. The next system is let's get people together. It's a collaborative culture. Masterminds is thinking that expands our thinking. We think we know where our blind spots are, but no. That's why they're called blind spots. Having people give us good feedback. Those that aren't yes people. Those are people that will challenge us. So we build this high-performing culture because we've worked on our skill set to do that. And 3, let's put it into systems. How do we work together? Conductors know how to rehearse. Anybody ever conducted a boring or been a part of a boring, unproductive meeting? Yep. Anybody ever conducted one? Well, we have bad meetings, but we expect good results. In the music world, we must have high performance, but comes from high rehearsals, high standard rehearsals. We rehearse for excellence. So the third principle is rehearse for success. We build good systems. You've got good vision, you've got good people. Work on how people are going to be engaged. I work with nonprofit boards around the country. I work with professional staffs in mid-cap size corporations. We don't know how to work together. We don't know how to play our instruments. We don't know how to sing the song together. We don't know how to function as a team. So as a leader, we create the space for people to function together, to openly share ideas, to debate. And as a leader, it's important for us not to give people the answers, but to ask really good questions. So we've got really good people. We're doing worthy work. We must create a system. Time and time again, I find that people who are calling themselves leaders aren't leading. They're telling, they're pushing. They're telling people what to do rather than empowering people to raise their own standards and find the answers. We still mentor people. We still coach people. 2 different tracks. Mentoring is helping people with subject matter. Coaching is empowering people to find the skill that they have within themselves. As leaders, we create the space for what in music we call ensemble, where we work on this extra performance standard that we create ourselves. So the leader observes what's going on and nurtures the performance. We must know where we're going. We must know people. We've built a relationship, and we must pay attention. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. This is where we listen more than we talk. And then the 4th principle, in music, there's rests. Rests are there for a very specific reason. It's just not absence of sound. It's a place where we punctuate the sound. Lots of dramatic sound. There's a pause. It sets up the next section. It also validates what's happened before. In the world, we don't create balance. We work all the time. If we're with other people, it's time to be accountable to them. And so asking them to say, I struggle with this balance thing. I'm working too hard. I'm running too fast. I'm working too many days. I'm working too many hours. So part of our mastermind group is our accountability group, a group to give us feedback. And the most transparent corporate leaders I've ever seen, I was with one last week in Virginia, and he said to his executive team, I am doing too much. I need you to help me figure out this and figure out this. Everybody in the room stepped up and said, well, you know what? I could do this. Now, a lot of leaders would say, I don't want to admit that I don't know this. I don't want to admit that I have a weakness. I don't want to admit that I have a problem. Guess what? They already know. So you might as well say, let's do this together. So we as leaders, transparency is a trait. So we as leaders open up transparency with others. Brene Brown writes books and talks about being vulnerable. I learned from one of the great conductors, teachers of conductors, that until we can become vulnerable on the podium as conductors, we can't really make music. It's the same in the boardroom. It's the same if you have 2 people in your staff. If you don't have a staff, you've really got a team because you're talking to marketers, you're talking to consultants. Or if you've got a multinational team, we are the influence. those people have particular expertise or they wouldn't be on your team. Our job as leaders is to be very vulnerable, be very transparent, ask good questions, and listen carefully to the answers. Part of what I do as I work with teams that have team leaders who have teams, executives who have multiple teams, I work with them on thinking about their coaching skills. And it's a reframing from what people normally think. And some of this applies directly to your mastermind. Number one, coaches listen. It's 90% listening with your eyes, with your ears. Things are happening. Leaders figure out what's happening and how it's happening, and we respond to that. We don't react to that. So number one, we listen. And I suggest to people, after someone's talking that you're working with, wait 3 seconds. It's clarification. It gives you time to think. It's validation. It says to the person, I have heard you. Clears the air, and then you come back, they're ready for the response. So when we have this collective group, our job is to ask good questions. They respond. We listen actively. That doesn't mean you're doing something else. You're not on your smartphone. We're looking at them. We're listening. We're observing. And then we listen with silence and we respond. It changes the whole context of what we're doing. And so as leaders, if you can embrace these 4 principles, I don't care if you're leading a small team or a large team, if you're working in a religious, faith-based organization or community organization or a multinational business, those 4 pillars of learning for yourself and embracing those principles will enable you to move to the next level, to the top level of your skill, one step at a time. Think about the choir or the orchestra. That's a good model of transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is not about us, it's about the vision. Here's where we're going. I'm very good at articulating that vision and influencing others to follow the vision. I'm the holder of the vision, I'm the leader. They are the team. Transformational leaders build leaders on teams. So we create this ensemble of excellence, which is a reflection of our ability to lead. Nobody can do that for us. It's not a straight line to success, nor is every day an easy day. It's a challenge, but it's a worthy challenge. And when we get on the other side, getting there is part of the skill set that we've built into the culture. We are building strong cultures, we're building weak cultures. I hear a piece of music performed by one conductor and one orchestra, it's okay. I can hear the same piece of music performed by a different orchestra, a different conductor, and it's amazing. The difference is the leader, the inspiration of the leader that brings that passion out of the players. We can accomplish a lot more than what the burdens are we put on our thinking. So the culture of the ensemble, the culture of your team, is the transformational culture. We transform cultures, we transform ourselves, we transform people's lives. We build leaders on teams. It's a reflection of us. We must always work through integrity, through authenticity, and inspire others. So I hope these 4 anchor principles will help you think through your skill set and what will you do today and tomorrow and the next day that are going to help you continue to build your skills. I work with leaders on 4 continents, and the very best leaders that I work with are doing an amazing job already. So why do they need a coach? Because they know there's so much more that they can do. It's just the people who aren't making it that say, no, I'm going to figure it out. So number one, if you don't have an advisor, confidential advisor, coach, get one. Because if you look at the most successful people in our culture, they have at least 1, 2, or 3 people working with them. Surround yourselves with the best people. Be sure the work you're doing is worthy. and be sure that you know that you will succeed. Failure is just a learning opportunity. We learn from that. Failure is when you don't get up, when you fall down. Failure is a chance to do better. It's falling forward, as John Maxwell said. So my hope for you is that you will think of leadership not only as your skill set, but leadership as a high-functioning culture, like your ensemble, and that you will lead the rehearsal and encourage people to fix what they can fix and do a better job. So what will you do today that will change others' lives that you change about yourself? We don't change anybody in the culture. We change ourselves, and people in the culture respond. As a conductor, I know what they see is what I get. So when I don't get something I want, first thing I do is look in the mirror. What do I need to do differently? So whatever is behind us and whatever is ahead of us, they're tiny matters, as Emerson said, compared to what's within us. Claiming our excellence will unbound us and help us achieve the success that we were created to achieve. Thank you very much. If we're going to have the very best team possible, we need to know who they are and if they're really qualified. So the first pillar is competency. Second pillar is, do they understand and have we been clear about their role and responsibility, no matter where they are, even a board of directors on a charity. They have a role and responsibility and they have a competency. Third, do they fit our culture? We don't often do that. And so one person that doesn't fit disrupts the whole culture. And fourth, have we defined expectations? What do we want them to accomplish? So no matter if it's the V word, a volunteer as a board member, or a paid staff person, or a new executive, we want to be clear that we've covered all of those, because having the wrong person is worse than not having anybody.
I'm Kurt Reed with Chill Cryosana, All Natural Health Wellness Center. And the question I've got is, how important, you mentioned that 501Cs being on the board is important to the organization. Where do we go to find those?
There's a lot of places that you can go to find. If you don't attend a local Rotary, you'll find a lot of conversations there, not necessarily with leaders of charities, but sometimes. But you'll find other executives who are parts of boards of charities. Your local community foundation. There's a community foundation that supports a whole bunch of charities. The Chamber of Commerce. Go where people gather, where leaders gather, and just get to know people. And find an organization that you have a passion for their vision and mission. Because you want to have a good fit for yourself, and they want to make sure that you have a good fit. And then ask them really good questions. What value could I bring? What role would I play? What could we accomplish if I were part of your organization? And listen to those answers, and that will be a good clue if it's a good fit for you.
Mr. Hugh, Betty Lord Hillman, you mentioned in your opening segment with Mr. Don that 501(c)(3)s, nonprofit organizations, are more important now in the business community than ever before. Can you tell us why you think that?
A 501c3 is a type of nonprofit. There are lots of different types. But grouping them generically under a tax-exempt charity, it's a tax-exempt business really, we live in a very divided, contentious world. And our politics today are more divided than ever. We could model something different in our charities. We have come together aligned around a passion for doing good in the community where we are. And we are a part of that. And so bringing our expertise and then seeing there's opportunities to collaborate with other nonprofits in our community, religious organizations of all kinds. So we're in a place that government can't do things that we can do as the non-governmental organization that we're founded to be. So we have a very special calling, and we can bring a whole lot of value. We're into jobs creation, we're into economic development, we're into empowering people in our communities. We can fight poverty, fight hunger. We can empower people to do things that the government can't do. And today we're in a very divided world. We can set a new model as charities.
My name's Pip. Nice to see you again. So my question is, you were talking about when you have a team and you need to build relationships as a leader with that team. In today's economy, we have a lot of teams are very far-flung, virtual organizations. I have a friend who has a company, 150 employees, only 22 of them are at the home office. The rest are all over the United States. How much more challenging does that make, that relationship building?
That is a very important question because we live in a world where we have a lot more virtual teams. And people work at home even in the same city. And so I encourage people to have team meetings on some video platform. I use Zoom, there's Skype, there's many others, but a video platform because we want to be face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball. And we consistently work on creating the value of relationship, no matter if we're in the same room. I've seen people text each other in the next cubicle in a business, so they might as well be remote. So many times, and the more high-tech the company is, the more they're separated from each other personally. And so in any kind of organization, we fight this. And so we're really on different continents, so we have to try harder. It's really important when you have a virtual team to have them gather in person at least once a year. Some time together. There's an organization in Raleigh called Stop Hunger Now. They're packaging 78 million meals this year, going toward 300 million, and they will eliminate hunger in our world in our lifetime. They have a team all over the world. They gather together once a year, and they have a multi-day. It's not really team building. It's really creating relationships, creating value, understanding the work they do together. There's no replacement for face-to-face. The second one is video to video, and spending time with those people, finding out who they are, developing personal relationships, because the transformational leader values the person, not just the role they play. So it's based on, let's value the person, let's get to know the person. And people show up at work for a paycheck, but they perform at a higher standard because they have the relationship, because they feel personally fulfilled in their work.
Hi, I'm Christina Jones, and I have a 501c3. Actually, it's a new organization. This might be a two-part question. Now, I understand the concept of being able to create partnerships between for-profits and nonprofits, because ultimately my goal and in my heart is that if we can join communities together, that means on the for-profit world along with nonprofits, where we can make this organization profitable in the sense of not needing government assistance. Is that possible today? I mean, is that possible to be able to not depend on the government? Because one of the things about being tax exempt is that we can qualify for grants, people can write those donations off on their taxes, all of that. But creating an organization where we're not dependent on a grant from the government, but we're dependent on our community banding together to join together in the cause that we have. Is that possible? Absolutely,
it's essential. And a lot of corporate executives don't want to join a board because the meetings are so boring and they're so bad. And so we want very good people on our teams. It's essential to learn how to run good meetings. Now, my podcast, Orchestrating Success, there's a whole podcast on conducting power-packed meetings. It's like a conductor does a rehearsal. And so we want to have the systems to where everybody around that table can perform at their highest ability. We want to be sure that there's a role of responsibility for everybody there. Business people know it's good for business. Also, they want to give back to the community. So it's a win-win. And as we're looking, if you don't have a strategic plan for your enterprise, you'll never make money. Period. You must have a strategy. It's a roadmap. People know where to be engaged. So if you want your stakeholders engaged, they need to be a part of writing that strategy. They need to be a part of creating the action plan to do it. You still hold the vision. You're the founder and the leader. The other thing is we don't need to have government money. There are 8 streams of revenue. None of those is government funding. Grants could be private foundations or government grants. But there are lots of private foundations that give very substantial grants for specific reasons. Only if you have a strategy, only if you have an active board, only if you can say, here's the impact of that money. So it all comes out of this foundational piece understanding your roadmap. This is a clear map of where we're going. That will engage professional business people because they understand that. And so get them engaged, make sure that they're around the table, and make sure that that meeting is a power pack session that everybody can contribute. And they go out of there saying, wow, when's the next one?
Thank you very much for being with us today. And this gentleman right here, Hugh Ballou, B-A-L-L-O-U, go join him on LinkedIn. You want to be connected to the world? This man can connect you to the world, and he's got the heart to connect with the world, and he's been a friend of 12 years, and I just want to one more time say thank you for being with us today, Hugh. I appreciate you.
Thank you for inviting me.